So again, since it's a little bit in the distance, I'll work with the cobalt blue and a little bit of quin gold on the brush and just start working in the tree line here. Especially, we really want to profile those trees along that top edge of the cliff here. And just quick brush strokes, almost like a visual sentence. It's part of the linkage there, the visual passage. I'm not trying to be too careful with each tree, especially at that distance. We just want to give the sense of the trees being on that slope. Not only do the trees live along the ridge line, but they live down the slope a little bit, so we'll develop that just a little bit there too. So the same thing will take place on this top edge here. So we'll add those in pretty much predominantly cobalt blue again for distance. The farther away we are, the more there's a tendency for things to have blue in them. Pushing upward with the brush. And that gives me an irregular stroke. If I push into it like this, I have the same tendency to make the same kind of pointed tree all the way along there. And again, down the slope a little bit below the ridge line. We don't want just a trail of trees along the main ridge line there, but we want them in other places as well. So you can see with this stage, again, 1, 2, 3, now we're going to fourth. It's a fourth level of detail and specificity. I'll develop my third level of value on the shadows here at the same time. So with the French ultramarine, which gives me a little more covering power, I come in with specific shadow lines and fractures in the stone and detail. I'm going to go up to a larger brush and wash in a bigger shape than with a number 6 here. And charge it with quin burnt orange. So we get a little bit of warm reflected light into the shadows that way. Notice how I just let it softly change back to the cooler blue up along the ridge line there. Second layer on some of this area, darkening it a little bit. With these values and colors, I'm using mostly the French ultramarine because it has a little bit more covering power. It's a sedimentary color, so it's more apt to give me the darks that I'm after. Cobalt blue is a difficult one to get real dark darks with, so use the French ultramarine more in the latter stages of building up values rather than earlier. And there's a tendency, if you overuse the French ultramarine, for it to become shiny on the surface. So that's why I'm careful not to layer too thickly with the French ultramarine. And it can make your painting look a little bit black if you use it so heavily. Some of these areas are very dry and some are very wet. So I'm working with soft edges and harder edges in these areas. So if you notice this rim of light here, how it links visually to this little bit of light here and connects with this line here and points down toward this little bit of a visual cradle here. So those are things that are somewhat pre-planned, but sometimes it's just from experience of linking things so many times that it becomes sort of second nature, I guess you would say. So now I'm really sticking that number 3 brush into pigment here. Getting a real thick into thin thing going on here with a thick dark line into the thinner washes already laid in. And that gives me the feeling of the detail again and the weathering of the granite. Sometimes I have to go to the detail a little bit while these areas are wet. That's why I jump to the smaller brush a little quicker than I might so that I can pick up this wet area and work in a wet area to get a softer line. Before I get too involved in detail, I want to carry on to another part of the painting. So I'll just continue this development through the painting here. I'm interchanging brushes here. When I need a larger shape, I use my 3-inch brush. When I need a smaller shape, I jump to my number 6 round. So at this stage, I'm keeping the brushes in my hand so they'll be readily available to me. What I'm doing is coming back in and charging those with little areas of color. And that gives me a little more intensity and a little more variation in my washes that way. So here I laid in some burnt orange, and now I'm charging that burnt orange shadow with French ultramarine. So just going back and forth with those two colors here. Continue in this area, French ultramarine. Maybe charge it with a little burnt orange. I was going warm to cool on that. This again gives me the sense of the vertical plane on that shadow there.